Hi, everyone. This is John Yarber from Lifesize, and I'm here today with Wayne Young, who's the Chief Executive Officer for the Harris Center. Wayne, thank you. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you.
Well, we appreciate you making time to speak with us today. To kick things off, I'd love it if you could just share a little bit with me about the Harris Center. Could you help everyone understand what the organization is all about and the services you provide?
Absolutely. So the Harris Center, our full name is the Harris Center for Mental Health and IDD. We are the local mental health authority for Harris County, which is the third largest county in the country. We are responsible for ensuring service delivery to people who have serious mental illness and intellectual or developmental disabilities. And our charge is really to provide services to those who have very limited resources. They don't have insurance, they're uninsured, or primarily they may have Medicaid, but those who don't have a lot of resources and need fairly significant help, they usually have very complex life situations and needs.
When did the organization first launch, and can you share a little bit about the origin story behind your involvement with the Harris Center and when this large metro area that is Harris County first realized that this was a service that it needed to provide for the community?
Yeah, so we are in that group or cluster of providers that are often referred to as community mental health centers, and we, like most of them, came about in the mid to late 60s as they began to try and transition people out of state hospitals and back into communities. They began to establish these community mental health centers to provide community-based supports, care, and treatment for those individuals that we were trying to get back into their community and living in the community, so that they would, have all the benefits and luxuries of a home and community and partnerships and relationships and kind of all the social context that all of us enjoy and appreciate. And so the Harris Center was in the mid 60s created. We are technically a unit of government, and so we were established by statute. We are not a part of the county government, although the county is our sponsoring entity. In fact, our governance structure is created of a board of trustees who are appointed by our county commissioners. So through that appointment, we are accountable to our county and charged with meeting our community's needs.
That's amazing. So switching gears a little bit, we obviously are all experiencing a very significant and evolving health crisis right now with the spread of the coronavirus. But before we get into that, I'd love it if you could just speak a little bit about the time period leading up to this, prior to the coronavirus. How would the organization typically provide the services that you provide to the community? What does that look like in terms of in-person interaction with these folks that you provide your services to versus some of the virtual programs that you also provide?
Absolutely. So I would say that really prior to my arrival, almost everything we did was face-to-face and traditional based, right? It was the way probably most providers have been delivering care for many, many years. And we began to try and accelerate and move towards some virtual service deliveries. We did some innovative work. We just finished up a year-long pilot with the Harris County Sheriff's Office where we used Lifesize and some mobile technology to allow us to actually provide a mental health counselor consultation with law enforcement when they respond to 911 calls in the community. So we were doing some stuff. We began to do some clinic-based remote telepsychiatry. We would have providers who might be doing locums work for us in another state, and we had our clients here, and we would connect them using the Lifesize platform to deliver that care. But it was really kind of innovation-driven or kind of necessity. It wasn't a large-scale rollout of the platform or reliance upon the platform. At least we had rolled it out so that all of our equipment and desktop was consistent with and could utilize the platform. But we were not relying upon it on a day-to-day basis in the way that we are now in the face of this virus and our response to that.
Yeah, well, let's talk a little bit about that. So how has the coronavirus impacted normal day-to-day operations? What are some of the things that you've had to change as a result of both social distancing policies being rolled out by local and state governments, as well as federal recommendations from CDC, HWO, and others? What does it look like for you and your team and the folks that you're providing care to today?
Yeah, it has kind of turned it on its head, if you want to know the truth. It is upended it significantly. We found ourselves, I had been on vacation and I came back and on Monday, we said, okay, we got to get together and think about what this is going to look like if it progresses. And this was several weeks ago. How are we going to deal with a remote workforce? We had seen some other large communities began to move towards shelter-in-place kind of scenarios or work-from-home scenarios. Literally that night on the news was our county judge saying that, we're moving in that direction and in fact want people to work from home as much as possible and social distance. And so the next morning we came in and said, okay, what we've been thinking about is a phased out approach, or phased in, depending on how you're looking at it. We got to turn that on its head. And we're large, particularly for a behavioral health organization. We're large. We're about 2,400 employees, specifically focused on delivering services to behavioral health and folks with IDD. And so within a matter of about a week, a little over a week, we transitioned about 1,700 to 1,800 of those employees to working remotely from home and delivering care either via phone or via our telehealth platform. And so it was a dramatic shift. It was one that no one would ever intentionally try and make that kind of shift over a 7-day window, but necessity ruled. And we not only do we need to ensure that we continue to deliver services, and we're an essential service provider, we're an essential organized business, so we do have a responsibility and a need to stay open, but we also, even though that was the case, wanted to try and protect our clients and our staff as much as we could as well. And so while there might not have been a requirement that we transition as quickly as we did, it felt like the right thing to do from a community standpoint and for the overall good of our folks served and our community and our healthcare providers that are really working hard to try and make sure that we all stay healthy in this process.
Yeah, that's incredible. That's an incredible amount of change over a very short period of time. So you mentioned these changes started happening several weeks ago. When did you know that it was time? Was it based on the recommendations of local officials? Was that the tipping point when you decided that this was the time to start moving staff remote and thinking about virtual alternatives to the way that you did business?
That really is the trigger for it. Like I said, we were kind of having some dialogue about let's get ahead of this, right? And then joke's on us. 3 or 4 hours later, we're no longer ahead; we're behind, right? And we appreciate those elected officials. We value their guidance and their input, and it did accelerate our time frame to try and meet that. And we do still have some. We run a variety of emergency psychiatric services that are still operational in a face-to-face way. And we also deliver our behavioral health care for our jail system. And so we have not moved exclusively, but again, the 75-80% of our workforce is now remote. And it was their guidance that was kind of the trigger that said, okay, we have to do it quickly as well.
You're a chief executive officer for a team that's fairly large, and you provide care to a community that's incredibly large. I grew up in the suburbs of Harris County, and so I'm very familiar with the Houston area, sprawl, just this large metro area with a massively growing population. What is your day-to-day looking like right now? How are you balancing both your own time and trying to be a leader to your staff, as well as continuing to ensure that you're able to provide these incredibly important services to the community?
Yeah, it is. Much like probably my team members, it's a little bit upended. A lot of it is being done virtually. I'm still coming to the office every day. I feel like if I've got a team that I'm putting out in the field, I need to mirror that and model the responsibility to ensure those services happen. And so I am still here, but a lot of our meetings. This morning we are partnering with the public hospital system in our community to roll out Epic as our electronic health record. And the implementation go live was yesterday morning. And we had planned on a big party where we would have breakfast and snacks and our leadership team would come together, and there's about 120 in our leadership team. And instead that event and that rollout happened via Lifesize and remotely. So we had 4 people in the room. It's a big room. It normally holds about 120 people. So we had 4 people live, very appropriately social distance. We had our partners from Wisconsin were on the phone, and we had local public hospital folks, and they were a part of the presentation, the normal kind of slideshow and that deal. And that rollout still needed to happen. We can't afford to get behind by a month or two because we need now more than ever probably for that record to go live as quickly as it can, so we can provide better collaborative care. And so everything from big meetings to small individual, even my We do have some folks that are still working here directly, but a lot of those, even the individual meetings, we're using the platform for that so that we can maintain that distance and try and help ensure that everyone is as safe and healthy as possible.
Yeah. Well, talking about your use of Lifesize for a moment, it sounds like everyone's sort of finding the tools to stay in touch with one another. Any changes to how you're keeping in touch with your team right now? Are you finding yourself more inclined to use video? Or are you trying to shy away from it because you feel like you're on the phone all day? What is your communication like these days?
Yeah, I think it's a hybrid of phone and video. I think there's times where that conversation just works better when you can see each other, especially to me in small team meetings. The big ones can get a little unwieldy sometimes if you've got 120 people on the line. The background noise and the mutes and all that stuff gets to be a little tricky. But if you've got a meeting with 5 or 6 people, we're almost exclusively doing those using video. Individual ones are having both video and phone, depending on kind of what the nature of it is. And that connectivity seems critical. And that seems to be true for our workers who are delivering care as well. They seem to be kind of flexing back and forth based on what makes the most sense. Some of our clients, aren't comfortable with technology and they would prefer a phone call, and some of them really value the video. It seems to me that this is an opportunity to try some things that we probably would have never wanted to take the risk of trying in a normal planned business kind of continuity perspective. And I'm curious to see what our learnings are going to be. I think it will change the way we work well into the future. Even when we can get back to normal, I think there's going to be some new norms about this that we all just kind of develop and realize this can work very well for us. Yeah.
Well, speaking of learnings, and again, as a leader, somebody that's having to make really important decisions in real time with climate and different variables changing all the time, what are some of the things that you've learned through this process? A few weeks in, and where do you think that sort of you have decided that you're going to you have conviction about the way that you need to keep your team together, or that you need to coordinate with your stakeholders inside and outside your organization? Any key lessons learned 3 weeks into a health crisis that we candidly don't yet know how long it's going to take, how long we'll be living in this new normal?
Yeah, I would say there's a couple of kind of lessons I've learned real quickly, and I'm grateful for all of them. One is that the ability to trust your team. Right. There was a lot of angst about, will the services get delivered, and will people be connected, and will we be able to ensure that we keep delivering the care that we need to deliver to help our folks stay healthy and in recovery in the community. And we've got some dashboards that we're able to look at, and there's been almost no drop off in that care delivery component. And so that's exciting to me to be validated that our team members are doing what they need to do, and they're committed to our mission. And so that to go from an organization where almost no one works from home to where almost everyone is working from home, you haven't developed the policies and the processes and the confidence and the culture that supports that. And so you don't know exactly what that's going to look like when you flip that switch. But it happened, and it happened naturally. And I think it's been validating to me. The other thing I think is to provide a little bit of grace, right? So I've had some employees who, they leapt in, grabbed it with both hands, and were off and running, right? And I've had some other employees who, they need a little hand holding. They need a little extra support. We can't do elbow to elbow support right now because of the distancing, right? But they need somebody that was kind of there to walk them through this and reassure them a little bit too, because they weren't comfortable with it. It wasn't how they were trained. It's a different model. They worry about, does it have the same efficacy as it does, and trying to provide that reassurance and getting, frankly, some of the research that suggests it is very similar in terms of outcomes. But each employees, or many of our employees, seem to develop and be comfortable at a different pace, and allowing for that flexibility and a little bit of grace that goes with it, to allow people the opportunity to learn at a different rate and be uncomfortable with it and say that they're uncomfortable, and support them through that, I think, has been really important for us in our workforce as well.
Yeah, that's I think important. Flexibility and meeting people where they are, I think, is clearly something that's meaningful for everyone right now, just feeling like they have an outlet for their concerns and experiences. Wayne, well, I really appreciate the time. Before I let you go, I was hoping I could just ask you to speak a little bit about the importance of mental health care professionals and services during this time. Obviously, one of the things that's top of mind for your community, for mine here in Austin, Texas, and all over the world is the impact the coronavirus is having on people in terms of stress and trying to manage through a health crisis that most of us have no precedent. We've never experienced something like this before. How do you think about both your organization's purpose, your employees, the work that they do, as well as how you're serving a community? And what I would imagine about is as much of a time of need as any other that we're likely to experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think from a personal level, I think we all need to recognize that this does impact us, right? And even people who don't have, traditionally haven't experienced a mental illness or had mental health or mental wellness challenges, they are going to be faced with kind of new normals and challenges to that psychological safety that they're experiencing, and give themselves room to let that be normal and to experience that and to be okay with it and to talk to people about it. There's something about if you allow it to become stigmatized or you're uncomfortable sharing it, it just makes it more powerful. And to that point, we set out 2 weeks ago, a little over 2 weeks ago now, recognizing that there was kind of a local need, and there was the general angst and anxiety and stress. And it wasn't a mental illness, it wasn't depression. It was, what does our world have? What's happening in our world? What's going on? How's this going to be different? How am I going to get back to normal? When am I going to get back to normal? And that disruption, the upheaval that's happened in kind of all of our normal social institutions, churches and schools and work, those are three big institutions in our world, and they've all been upended in a way that none of us would have imagined just probably a month or two ago. And so we did start off, and we set up a local COVID-19 mental health support line to just provide trauma-informed support and psychological first aid to those who are struggling. And it was well received. And in fact, within about a week and a half, it became the statewide COVID-19 mental health support line. And so we actually have a statewide support line people can call and reach out to at any time, and it's manned by counselors 24/7 to provide that support, because this is impacting all of us. And we set it up different than our normal crisis line. Every mental health community mental health center in Texas has a crisis line that we man and provide kind of that critical crisis access to people for. But this isn't crisis oriented. This is everyday stress and angst. And so we're averaging right now between 175 and 225 calls a day on that line from all over Texas with people who are struggling. And frankly, we're validating and supporting that. It's not unusual for them to be experiencing the stress that they're experiencing. And we want to be here to support them with that.
Well, on behalf of myself and the entire team at Lifesize, just want to say thank you to you personally, as well as your entire team, for the work that you're doing. We recognize that in many respects, they're the front lines of providing a service that everyone in the world I think would agree is just essential and incredibly important right now. So again, thank you for the time, and we appreciate all that you're doing.
Well, and again, part of what started this conversation was my expressing gratitude for y'all opening up your platform. Literally, I had said to my IT guy, we got to figure out how we get more spaces on Lifesize, and he came back with the announcement that said y'all had expanded that, and it made a huge impact. And it was one less thing we had to figure out how to deal with and overcome in that kind of stressful window of time.
Well, it's kind of you to say. We're glad that there's at least a small thing, some steps that we're able to do to support organizations like yourself. So thanks, Wayne. I appreciate the time. Thank you for sharing your story with us, and we'll be sure to include the information about the hotline in our content that we put out.